Loved one.
Positively Connecticut is made possible through leadership funding from People's Bank, with additional support from the Connecticut Development Authority. I'm Diane Smith. As you'll see in our program, I travel the highways, byways, and waterways to bring you the stories that are positively Connecticut. They're stories that make us feel good about our corner of New England.
I'm John Klein, President and CEO of People's Bank. Positively Connecticut's focus reflects the commitment that People's Bank has had to its customers and communities in our great state since 1842. That's why People's is proud to bring this unique show to CBTV viewers.
Hi, I'm Diane Smith. Coming up next, a new leash on life for some Connecticut pooches and their partners. Rave reviews for Westport's own Joanne Woodward in her latest role, Offstage. Why are some Enfield firefighters rushing to their local schools every week? And Scouts Honor, you'll meet one of Connecticut's oldest and most loyal Boy Scouts. On the next edition of Positively Connecticut, coming up. Hi, I'm Diane Smith, and we are here at the home of the Connecticut State hero, Nathan Hale. More on that in a minute, but first, strangers giving each other a second chance at life in the most unlikely of places. Ruth Foster's life dramatically changed twice. The first time was when an accident left her with a brain injury and a severe hearing loss. The second time was when Haley, an Australian cattle dog mix, became her constant companion.
I'm a lot happier now. My parents have definitely noticed that I'm a lot happier now that I've had her. I sort of went into a depression. This is so unfair. Why do I have to go through this?
Haley is a service dog who alerts Ruth to sounds she would otherwise miss. Dropped keys, a ringing phone, a kitchen timer.
So she's definitely made my life better. Not only in the fact that I have independence, I can go wherever I want and can be home alone, but emotionally as well.
Haley was adopted by a rescue group, and she got her second chance at life when she was incarcerated at the York Correctional Institution in Niantic. She was part of the Prison Pup Partnership, a program that allows inmates to raise and train service dogs for people living with disabilities.
Pause. Good job. Good boy. Pause.
Barney, a black lab, lives with Debbie in her small room 24/7. The dogs arrive as puppies and stay at least a year, learning the skills they'll need to help their future companions.
Good job.
In the training room, Barney and the other prison pups are put through their paces by their inmate handlers. Every week, a professional from National Education Assistance Dogs, an organization based in Massachusetts, comes and works with the women and all kinds of dogs, ranging from labs to poodles, even one Shih Tzu named Dandy. Since the program at York got underway a little over 4 years ago, more than 30 dogs have graduated.
I'm glad that I can do something for someone who can't do for themselves, and I'm helping them.
Good job.
The dogs have a calming effect on both the inmates and the prison staff.
I've always compared it to when somebody walks into a room with a baby, people say, oh, look at the baby. You know, when somebody walks into the room with a puppy, it's the same thing. Oh, look at the puppy. You know, so people just seem to be happier and less anxious.
Go through. Very good boy.
Nancy is a veteran, training her fourth dog, this one a yellow lab named Cody. Nancy, who took a life in a drunk driving accident, says training Cody for a life of service gives her a chance to make amends.
On a personal level, Cody's been there for me in a lot of issues that I've had to deal with from home. And then you're still part of something, so you're contributing back to society, and you know the final outcome of where he's going to end up it's great to be part of the process.
The dogs adapt quickly to the routine of prison life, going everywhere with their handlers, and sometimes taking furloughs with area residents for more socialization.
He needs to be needed, and it just works out because I need him.
Lisa needed her dogs in a different way. Serving time for conspiracy to commit assault, she left 3 children behind. In prison, she has raised 3 companion dogs. Soon to be paroled, Lisa says she'll be a better mother because the dogs have taught her
patience and the discipline and consistency, how really that does matter a lot. I've tried it with my children, that's how come I know.
raising dogs for people who cannot live a free life without them gave Lisa something else.
Being grateful for, you know, what we do have, especially in this environment. It's easy to get caught up in the we don't have this, we don't have that. And this program, for those who really want it and are here for the right reason, that's what they're going to get out of this, is appreciation for life.
At nearby Gates Correctional Institution, other inmates and animals are also getting a chance for a better life. The Second Chance Corral is where horses, the occasional goat, and even a turkey or two are housed when the Agriculture Department seizes them from neglectful or abusive owners. Some of the horses arrive near death, not much more than skin and bones. But inmates like Zach give them a healthy dose of TLC.
You can tell a big difference, not only in their weight, but their personalities a lot. You can see in their eyes, you can see in their facial expressions. You can really tell when a horse really starts to trust you.
Second Chance began when a former agriculture commissioner and several volunteers built the barn. Before Second Chance, fewer neglected horses were taken away from their owners because they were very hard to place. They're often sick and not vaccinated, so commercial stables don't welcome them. Complicating matters, the horses are often seized in large numbers.
It's a syndrome that they call hoarding or collecting, and the people, they can't give them up. And in their minds, I mean, they love these animals, and that's what makes it sad. Because a lot of people will say, don't you want to kill these people that do this? And no, because they have an attachment, but it's gotten away from them, and then the animals suffer, and that's where we have to step in.
Over the months of their rehabilitation, Maureen sees a difference not only in the animals, but in the men who care for them.
A lot of them are very reluctant to exhibit any kind of emotion, but if you come down here when nobody's looking, sometimes you'll find them in a stall just quietly petting one of the horses or cleaning it, trying to take care of it. I listen to them. They all talk to the horses when they go in there, and they all know the individual personalities of the animals, and it's really quite nice.
Most of the inmates working as stable hands have never been around horses before.
How do the animals seem to react to you? I mean, they've all been through a pretty rough time.
Some are better than others, and some have good days and some have bad days. But, you know, for the most part, they seem to be getting a lot better.
The stable has another function beyond being a medical and emotional infirmary. Each of these animals, from the Morgans to the miniatures, is being held as evidence in a civil or criminal case against their owners. In the safety of this lockup, the horses learn to respond to the touch of a human hand again, this time offered in kindness. Warden John Terrazio says for some of the horses, who will be auctioned off after they've recovered and the state's custody cases are completed, this is truly a second chance at a better life. And for some of the inmates who have helped them, it may be too.
So many of our people have come in and in essence, they've been abused. They've had a tough life. They've had a life full of crime and drugs. And this gives them an opportunity to feel good. And when they take those feelings back to the community, it gives them a chance at success.
A second chance that is positively Connecticut.
You might call Academy Award-winning actress Joanne Woodward a leaving lady as she departs from the Westport Country Playhouse, but not before leaving a lasting gift for her community and for Connecticut.
This play is called Our Town. It was written by Thornton Wilder and is being produced here by the Westport Country Playhouse. Name of the town, Grover's Corner, New Hampshire.
The Westport Country Playhouse just immediately became, boom, much more, apparent and noticeable and notable.
The Westport Country Playhouse was thrust into the spotlight in 2002 when Our Town, seen here in a Showtime Networks production, opened on Broadway starring Paul Newman.
That was a no-brainer, as they say, because we had that young man who shares my life.
It came at a critical time for the Playhouse when Woodward had stepped in to save it. This was the Red Barn the New York Drama School student first visited 50 years ago to see a friend perform.
And it was And the theater itself was so marvelous.
Little did Woodward know then that after making a life on stage, in film, and in Westport, she would devote herself to preserving the Playhouse and improving it with an $18 million renovation.
And we all sort of felt like we didn't want to change it too much or anything, but then,
That's right.
like Topsy, it grew and it got changed because it needed to. It had to be.
Ann Keefe is the Associate Artistic Director.
There were 5 of us sat down 6 years ago to talk about this project for meeting after meeting after meeting, and did some pie-in-the-sky dreaming. And I have to confess that I never thought this would happen.
For help, Joanne Woodward called upon influential friends, businesses, and a community of theater people like actor Christopher Plummer.
This theater particularly is important to be said because it had such a wonderful history. There are more extraordinary people who have performed here than are almost in any other theater on our continent.
Plummer himself got an early start here, and the stage has been graced by luminaries from Ethel Barrymore, Tallulah Bankhead, and Basil Rathbone, to a teenage Liza Minnelli, and recently Richard Dreyfuss, Gene Wilder, and that young man, Paul Newman. A new book chronicles the unlikely history of a barn built when Andrew Jackson was still president. The barn had been a tannery and a cider mill.
In 1930, Lawrence Langner, who was one of the founding members of the Theater Guild in New York City, lived in Weston, was looking for a place to do theater in the summer when the New York theaters shut down, mostly due to lack of air conditioning. Right. So he was looking for a place to work on projects outside of the city where it might be a little cooler, and he happened to buy this barn.
The fair was more than straw hat summer theater, including Shakespeare and Ibsen for its sophisticated audience. Over time, the barn began to crumble, but it was a beloved local landmark.
The thing that Joanne Woodward, our artistic director, always said is she wants a theater that's just like the old Playhouse. Don't change a thing, but make it the most marvelous theater for artists and for audience.
That meant a major overhaul.
You'd cross from one side of the stage to the other. You'd have to go down the stairs, run through the furniture, and up the other side of the stage. The grid, which flies the scenery out, wasn't quite high enough so that anything that came in couldn't go all the way out. So you'd see remnants of other scenes hanging in the background. All the systems were compromised. It was really time.
The orchestra pit, new stage, and up-to-date mechanics expand its range. New heating and air conditioning means the theater can operate year-round. And thanks to better acoustics, a summer thunderstorm won't drown out the dialogue on stage.
It's a smaller house. It's only 580 seats instead of 707. So in fact, it's a much more intimate space than it was. But when you walk into the theater, it's literally the same brown wood walls that were there. We have the same proscenium arch. We have red seats, but they're comfortable modern red seats with arms. But when you walk into the theater, you see those marvelous old wooden backs. We used to call them the pews.
This new building behind me has in no way marred that original charm. It's kept the same color, it kept the atmosphere inside. Although it's the same, it's now a hell of a lot more comfortable.
And we didn't want to tear it down. It would have been cheaper to tear it down and build a new theater. But I couldn't have done that. To the ghosts, I really believe in ghosts. And I think certainly theatrical ghosts are very much a part of the background, the sets, the walls.
Each actor entering the new stage will step on a patch of the old one. Both the Playhouse and Joanne Woodward turn 75 this year, and Woodward soon will hand off the baton.
I tell you, if I were 20 years younger, you couldn't have roused me out of that job.
Her successor can take the Playhouse to the next level.
They don't have just this quaint, adorable theater that, where the water comes down on you when it rains and all of that, and there are mice crawling around. And they don't have that. They have a house that is beautiful. It's a theater in which they can do practically anything.
The new curtain comes up first on a benefit for the nonprofit Playhouse, a one-man show starring Christopher Plummer.
It's an old theater with a new life, and if they've trusted me to walk on it, they must be mad, of course, but but I'm not going to argue with them.
In her final season as artistic director, Woodward will direct one play and reap the benefits of what she has reinvented.
I could wake up in the middle of the night saying, oh God, they're going to walk through that door and say, what have you done? And I'm going to think, oh, but it's so beautiful. It is so beautiful, and it's still very much our theater. It's our theater grown up, coming to its full flower.
The Westport Country Playhouse. For Joanne Woodward, an offstage performance that is positively Connecticut. In Bridgeport, the city he called home, there's a tribute to the greatest show on earth and its impresario, P.T. Barnum. There are lions, tigers, and bears, horseback riders, and daring acrobats, and even a little boy sneaking a peek under the big top. A little boy much like Bill Brinley was when he saw his first circus at the age of 9. Instead of running away to join the circus, Bill brought the circus home, picking up his jackknife and carving circus figurines out of wood and crafting circus wagons from cigar boxes. That was almost 80 years ago, and since then, the Meriden man has produced 2 remarkable circus replicas, hand-sewing 10-cent costumes, and recreating the splendor under the big top from images he captured with his Brownie camera. Brinley donated his first model circus to Bridgeport's Barnum Museum in 1968. Like old P.T., Bill's a dedicated showman, and years later, he called the museum again.
I told them, I got a circus that I can fill up this room with. I said, would you be interested? And of course they were. I have my whole life's work here, which is a real honor. It couldn't be in a better place.
This model circus is on display for the rest of this year, and it too may one day find a permanent place here. Meanwhile, Bill's masterpiece continues to expand. His fingers may not be as nimble as they once were, but he's making several oxen and a stagecoach for his miniature Wild Wild West show. He never joined its cast, but Bill Brinley has had a life with the circus that is positively Connecticut.
Another life that is positively Connecticut is that of our state hero, a young man who had but one regret.
You might call this farm in Coventry a cradle of liberty. From here, the Hale family sent 6 sons to fight in the Revolutionary War. The words of one of them resonate through history.
What we say here at the homestead is, I regret that I have but one life to lose for my country.
Those were Nathan Hale's last words before he was hanged by the British for spying, a role he did not take on lightly.
When Washington put out a call for a volunteer to study what the British were up to, for a couple of months nobody volunteered, and we do have a series of letters written by Nathan Hale that spell out very clearly the process he went through in searching his soul and deciding whether or not he should do this.
George Dudley Seymour, a New Haven lawyer, preserved the home, including a shadow portrait of Nathan as a tribute to his hero.
It was one of the fanciest houses at the time period that we know of, from 1776 in Coventry. It's huge. There's a lot of wonderful woodwork and interior detailings that really kind of show the wealth and prosperity of the family.
The house will soon come alive in celebration of Nathan Hale's birth 250 years ago. A new visitor center is planned to better tell the story of our state hero.
I think that Nathan truly wanted to have a great adventure, as many young men even today do. I think that he wanted to give back. I think that his generation of Americans felt as though they had a pretty good life here. And I think that he wanted to do something glorious.
Something glorious that was positively Connecticut.
All of us could use some coaching in the game of life, and there are thousands of positions available across Connecticut. The benefits are great, and it only takes an hour a week.
Every time a fire truck leaves the station, it's to answer a call for help in the community. Some Enfield firefighters do that even when they're not aboard their rigs. They spend at least an hour each week at local schools mentoring children. Captain Don Ellis was the first mentor in the department, and his enthusiasm got his colleagues interested. The The father of a 22-year-old son, Don donates his lunch hours mentoring 4 boys.
Our fire department likes to have some presence in the school, and it's great being around the kids.
At the Edgar Parkman School, Don shares some firehouse chili with 12-year-old Bryant Chappell. Sometimes they shoot hoops, but they always shoot the breeze.
They're fun to have around if you basically have no friends, you have a friend there, always be there. So you should get a mentor. It's pretty cool. If I have something going wrong or something, I can tell him because I know I won't tell anybody, but he could tell me what to do and stuff like that. I don't feel like telling my parents. I can tell him.
I think the main thing is that someone cares about them. You know, you commit to being here every week. They commit to being, prepared, or they come to meet you here. So I think that teaches them a little bit of, from an adult standpoint, some commitment.
At JFK Middle School, Don is paired up with Brendan Colgan, who expected a mentor to be more like a tutor.
I really thought he was going to be this boring guy who'd come here and want to help me with work, but he turned out to be a really cool guy.
Most mentors say they get back much more than they put in, and as for making the time to do it,
If you really look at it, it's just an hour a day. At lunchtime they go over there, and I look at a lot of the people now that are, the military, that they're sent away for a year. The whole family life is upset for that. Put it in perspective like that, it's really not that much of a commitment.
the national mentoring movement began here in Connecticut with Norwalk's Dr. Susan Weinberger.
I believe that all children could benefit from at least, if not more than one mentor in their lives. I think the children who could benefit the most are unmotivated, unchallenged. They just need an extra little push to take them from where they are to where they need to be. Parents say that their children at home who are matched with a mentor at school get along better with their siblings. They're doing their homework. They're happy to jump out of bed and go to school in the morning. So it's a win-win situation, mentoring that is, no matter how you look at it.
Two guys came from behind.
At Bridgeport Central High School, John Esteves mentors 17 teenagers. Most of them, like John, use wheelchairs.
I try to teach them about being independent, trying not to rely on their parents so much, try to do things for themselves, speak to themselves, and it starts here in the school.
Now an advocate for people with disabilities, John is a former construction worker who became a paraplegic at 28 when a drunk driver hit him. He thinks it was easier for him than for kids born with disabilities.
They've been coddled by their parents, by the schools. They're not allowed to go to regular gym classes. Parents are scared to let them, go down the street in their wheelchairs, attend parties. They don't get invited to parties.
And he inspires them to change that.
I got a video here on self-defense that I found, and I was pretty amazed with it.
In weekly sessions with the kids, John talks to them about everything from self-defense to legal rights to their education. Above all, he encourages their newfound independence. Axel Cologne plans to go to college to study political science.
I think if I wouldn't have met him, I would have been kind of like on the downside and stuff. So, but now after I met him and stuff, he's helping me a lot.
I do everything from teaching kids how to go out in the community, to hunting, to fishing, to different sports, go to a dance for the first time, talk about relationships, asking a girl out for a date or a boy, things like that. They all have those questions. They're kids. People in they don't think that kids in wheelchairs have issues like that. Yeah, they absolutely do, sometimes more.
Mom and dad have a sort of an agenda when they talk to their kids. Teachers have an agenda, principals have an agenda. But if it's somebody who's a mentor and that's their sole relationship, kids can turn to them for a lot more than they can those other folks.
John helps kids like Jeremy Villanueva get jobs, and he nurtures their dreams. Lindsay Siafi made the cheerleading squad.
It sounded like it would be fun, and I talked to John, and he told me, go ahead and just try out.
Yeah.
And then I got the phone call that I made it, and it's cool.
John takes each of the kids for what he calls trip training. Today it's Lindsay's turn to learn to ride the city bus. By getting the students out of the house and into the world, this mentor has elevated their expectations for their lives. Tyler Brown wants to be an engineer.
The guy is a really great guy.
He's one of the coolest people I met. If it wasn't for him, I wouldn't even be around.
If that hasn't sold you on mentoring, maybe Dr. Weinberger will.
I think there's a hesitancy on the part of some adults. Do I have the time? Could I make a difference in the life of a child? What will this mean to me? Will the child like me? But my advice is try it and you'll like it. It's the best thing that you'll do all week.
Mentoring, a partnership that's positively Connecticut.
Helping kids get a start on solid ground is also the goal of the Boy Scouts.
A scout is trustworthy, loyal, helpful,